Craigneuk's one of those places you've got to have lived in to really understand. Tucked between Motherwell and Wishaw, it was once a proud working class scheme. Folk who grafted hard and looked after their own. Most people round here had someone who worked at Ravenscraig, the massive steelworks that kept food on the table for half the town. But when it shut in '92, it ripped the heart right out the place. Thousands lost their jobs overnight, and with that came poverty, frustration, and the kind of hopelessness that changes people. The government weren't interested. Thatcher had already wiped out the heavy industry across Scotland, and Craigneuk was left to rot. With no work and no prospects, heroin came flooding in from both Glasgow and Edinburgh, and it didn't take long before certain families wanted to take control of the trade. That's where the trouble started. On one side you had the Murdochs, the established faces. They'd been around for years, running scrapyards, collecting debts and holding a few local rackets. Everyone knew who they were, but they'd made plenty of enemies along the way. Then came the Nisbets, led by James Nesbit, who'd made his money through tobacco smuggling and other bits and pieces. They were ambitious and ready to move up. His sons James Jr., Stephen, and nephews John Henry, known as JH and Sean, were young, sharp and didn't scare easily. Along with a loyal bunch of pals, they started dealing in the same areas the Murdochs had always called their own. It didn't take long for the madness to start. There were threats going back and forth, a few cars smashed up, and then one night inside a local pub, it all came to a head. One of the Murdoch boys walked in, pulled a gun, and pressed it against young Stephen Nisbet's head. He was only about 18 at the time, and told him to tell his old man to stop pushing gear or there'd be consequences. That's what caused a 2-year war. From that moment on, Craigneuk wasn't just rough, it was dangerous. James Nesbit Sr. wasn't the type to back down. The Murdochs were older and more established, but the Nisbets were growing fast, and they weren't about to be scared off their patch. The first big move came not long after that pub incident. David Murdoch, the father of the Murdoch brothers, was jumped by members of the Nisbet crew. He survived, but it sent a clear message. This wasn't going to stop with words. After that, things went from bad to worse. Guns appeared on the streets, something Craigneuk hadn't really seen before. William Murdoch was shot in the head at his scrapyard, though by some miracle the bullet only grazed him. Weeks later, someone lobbed a grenade at the front of his house. The blast shattered windows and tore through the walls. That's when folk realised just how far this had gone. The young team around the Nisbets were wild, full of adrenaline and pride. And right in the middle of it all was JH Nesbit, the one everyone remembers. He was unpredictable, bold, and didn't care who he went up against. A few months after the grenade attack, JH and his cousins Stephen and Sean got tooled up with a handgun and drove to Golf Hill Road, where the Murdochs stayed. They parked up the street and waited. When John Murdoch came out, JH walked straight up to him and opened fire. One shot hit John in the knee, the other struck the back of his neck as he turned to run, severing part of his spine and leaving him paralysed from the neck down. Hearing the commotion, William Murdoch came out and chased JH down the street. But JH fired again, hitting him in the hand before vanishing into a side lane. Within minutes, he was back in the car, gone without a trace. The three cousins were arrested soon after and charged with the attempted murders of both Murdoch brothers. But when the case reached the High Court in Glasgow, the Murdochs clammed up. They refused to name names, gave conflicting statements, and the whole thing fell apart. The Nisbets walked free. But that wasn't the end of it, not by a long shot. Craigneuk was chaos. The tension reached its peak in 1994, when a hit meant for Alan Murdoch took the life of Douglas Bryce, a 21-year-old local lad who had nothing to do with any of it. He'd just been helping Alan start his car when shots were fired from a passing motor. One bullet hit Douglas in the neck, severing his jugular. He bled out in the garden before help arrived. The three men charged Billy Longmire, John McNeil and Derek McCready were all cleared after a wild court case where it was even suggested that Alan Murdoch might have shot Douglas himself. Ballistics showed the same gun hit both men, but the jury couldn't prove who fired it. Douglas's death was the final straw. The whole scheme turned on the Murdochs. Angry locals rioted in the streets, torched their cars and forced the family out of Craigneuk completely. Police had to escort them away for their own safety. After the Murdochs feud cooled off, most folk thought that was the end of the madness. But for John Henry JH Nesbit, it was only the start. The boy who'd been running around the scheme with a gun at 19 had grown into a man who wanted more than local scraps. He had ambition, proper big time thinking, and word was he had the brains to go with it. JH was respected in Craigneuk. Even folk who didn't like him would admit he carried himself different. He'd always been sharp, clean cut, and had that quiet confidence that made people listen. JH had his eyes on real money, the kind that came from planning, not chaos. By the mid-90s he'd started looking further afield, Ayrshire, Glasgow, even down south. That's when his name first got tied to what people still call the Bonnie and Clyde job, one of the slickest, most daring heists Scotland had ever seen. It went down in the summer of 1996 on a quiet back road near Dalgarvan Mill, outside Kilwinning. The Securicorps van was doing its usual run, nothing fancy, just 2 guards, a van full of cash, and a shortcut they'd probably used 100 times before. Only this time it was a trap. A white Ford Sierra suddenly pulled across the narrow lane and slammed on the brakes. Behind the wheel was a blonde woman, slumped forward as if she'd been knocked out. The guards stopped to help, but the second they stepped out, 4 masked men came charging from the bushes with shotguns and cans of petrol. They doused the guards, threatened to set them alight, and forced open the van. Within minutes, the crew were gone, the blonde decoy and the gunmen speeding off in a stolen blue BMW 5 Series. The haul, close to £900,000. The police called it one of the best planned jobs they'd ever seen. Both getaway cars had been nicked in Hamilton, both fitted with fake plates. Someone clearly knew the Securicorps schedule and exactly how much cash was on board. Detectives eventually focused on JH Nesbit. His name kept coming up too many times from too many sources. But when it came to court, the case collapsed. Witnesses disappeared or changed their stories and nothing stuck. JH walked out free. By 1999, the game had caught up with him. JH and his pal William Lindsay were last seen in Hamilton one night with about £20,000 in cash. 3 hours later, both were dead, shot multiple times and burned on a farm track near Elphinstone, East Lothian. Detectives said they'd been lured there by someone they trusted. No struggle, no chance to fight back. Both executed with a .44 Magnum, 1 shot to the head, 3 to the body. Then their killers poured petrol over the pair and torched them. Whatever the reason, he took the truth and the missing million to his grave. For the people who knew him back in Craigneuk, it hit hard. They'd watched him rise from the same streets they'd all grown up on. Tough, clever, fearless. Ask anyone who lived there through it and they'll tell you the same. Craigneuk in the 90s wasn't just rough, it was lawless. And through all that chaos, names like JH Nesbit will always be remembered. because in the end he was just another boy from the scheme. Smart enough to see the bigger world, brave enough to grab it, but never able to escape where he came from. This is for informational and storytelling purposes only, not professional, legal or personal advice. A big thanks to all my subscribers.